Hi, and welcome to Eldeco. We are thrilled you're here today. Today, we begin some of your safety and health training as part of your new employee orientation. There is nothing more important than you going to work on our projects and going home safely every day. This training will show that this is just the beginning of our commitment to you, because your safety matters. We are going to talk about a lot in this video, so hold on tight. We will cover the Eldeco Safety Management System, which includes information on proactive and reactive safety. Then the Eldeco 4 Pillars of Success, employee expectations, accident reporting requirements, emergency action plans, an example of a site safety plan, as well as some critical risk awareness for work at elevations, lifting operations, energy isolations, confined spaces, arc flash protection, and excavations. Now this is critical stuff, so it's super important, and we're going to remind you with the following noise. And of course, we will provide information and where to find help from our awesome safety team if you have any questions about your safety and the Eldeco commitment. Now, we know that it is not easy to work safely. Taking shortcuts may seem like the best choice, and you might even think we want you to make that choice, but we don't. We want you to always work safely, even if it takes longer. Yes, and even if it means you need to get the right tools or equipment. We are okay with that. Heck, we would really like that. In this section, we want to share more details about our corporate commitment to safety and how that is a part of every decision we make. As we've talked about already, safety is a big part of who we are at Eldeco. You matter to us. We believe that there are two ways to look at the challenges of safe work. It's either before or after an incident. We prefer preventing accidents by proactively planning for the safe way we do work. All of our policies should be seen as tools to do work safely, not as a method to punish or slow down work. You see, if we look for the hazards and risks in advance and plan how to protect you, we can avoid injuries and loss. Now, starting in 2018, we began using the SAFE program to encourage last-minute risk assessments right before you begin your work. Well, to be proactive with safety. Based on past injuries, we know we need to focus on sharp edges, pinch points, fall hazards, struck by moving objects, caught between fixed objects, and stored energy. The SAFE program helps you remember to stop. Before you start any activity, stop and think, what if this goes wrong? Then we want you to assess the work area and the task. Find the unrecognized hazards and identify how it may affect your task and your safety. And then finally, through conversation and proactive actions, remove the obstacles or let others know prior to starting the task. Now, if we have to have a loss, let's at least learn from it. We continue to update our policies and procedures so safety is for you and not to you. Hey, that sounds pretty good, right? We commit to taking the time to investigate all accidents to determine the root cause of the loss, not just to find fault or place blame, but to ensure the accident never happens again. And we want your input. Talk to us. Your involvement in safety is part of the way we improve the company and our workplace. But the journey to safety excellence is never over. So we follow the 4 pillars of safety in our model that includes leadership and engagement, safety management systems, risk reduction, and performance measurement. Now, stay with me here. The pillars are surrounded by the continuous improvement cycle of measure and remeasure, determining gaps and setting goals, developing improvement plans, implementing those plans, and capturing lessons learned. Sure, it's a great graphic, but what does it mean? It means we are completely committed to your safety at every level of the company, and we want your help. We want to be better every day, and we want to include you in that journey. The journey includes many stops along the way. So we will talk about those more as we continue this training. Now, like I said, our leadership is fully committed to the continuous practice of safety, from our CEO, Alan McKinney, to every leader and manager at Eldeco. Now, of course, we have the safety department here with qualified, competent professionals, but they can't do it all. Everyone is in a position of influence, even you, sitting right here watching this program. You can influence safe behavior on the job. We recognize that state and federal regulatory agencies, like OSHA, create rules that meet a minimum standard. But honestly, we think you deserve more than the minimum. We believe you deserve the best we can offer. But with that commitment to you, we look for the same commitment back from you. If we all do more than the minimum, we all raise the standard together, taking ownership of all of our safety. As you continue on the Eldeco journey, you will experience many of the other ways we show our commitment to you. We've got craft and safety training, professional development, safety stand-downs. One of the big ways we show our commitment is not just a lot of free lunches, but yeah, we do some awesome ones. But we take the time to review and evaluate what is the best equipment to keep you safe. We invest in the best fall protection equipment and even let you choose your own prescription protective eyewear. Okay, this is gonna sound like a long list, and it is, but it's important. Our safety management system, or SMS, is comprehensive, but for a reason. Our 9-step system, which is part of the second pillar, includes the following: management, leadership, and commitment, just like we talked about; organizational communications and systems documentation, because processes help us keep you safe; assessments, audits, and continuous improvement, because we evaluate our safety system to make sure it's doing what we need it to do; hazard recognition, evaluation, and control. That's our job safety task analysis, and we'll talk about more on that later. Workplace design and engineering. If you engineer a hazard off the job before you even arrive, that's the safest. Operational safety and health programs and employee involvement, because your opinion matters. Motivation, behavior, and attitudes, because you coming to work with the right attitude improves the safety of everyone. And finally, training and orientation, just like what we're doing right here, right now. We have utilized this SMS system to drive our rewards and recognition programs, the offering of that no-cost-to-you prescription safety eyewear program, like we mentioned before, and driving out unsafe and unproductive practices that have affected our safety year after year, like our STA process, and even this training. It's faster and more concise than in the past. Now, part of the way we prevent risk is to see it in advance, long before you start the work. Operations and safety work together in advance of the site work to ensure we have all the needed tools, equipment, materials, and safety knowledge to complete our work safely. As soon as we are awarded a project, safety and ops sit down and determine the how and what we will do to keep the job site safe. We look at the risks and determine how we're going to lower them. We use a risk rating system to determine how we will address work hazards. We try and get any high risk reduced to a medium, or better yet, a low. For example, sometimes we will put you in a lift with a fall protection harness instead of allowing you to work from a dangerously tall ladder. Or we may determine that full arc flash protection completed by highly competent, trained, and authorized workers is the only way that the work can be done safely. How do we measure our safety performance? Well, we talked about proactive and reactive safety before, but let's expand on how we measure it. At Eldeco, we look at both behaviors, those things you do right every day, like destroying a ladder that's not safe. That's what we call a leading indicator. And our actual numbers of losses or near misses, like someone using that ladder instead of a lift, and workers' compensation claims, we call those lagging indicators. Lagging means we measure something after it happens. Let's be honest. If we just looked at the past, it would not tell us all we need to know. Plus, we don't want to just see what's wrong, but instead look for what is right on the job every day. That is why we have hazard auditing programs and pre-task planning, so we can see the risks. Helping us see hazards and helping fix them can prevent an accident before it can even happen. Encouraging others to always work safely is another way that you can help. Your safety is the most important thing to us here at Eldeco. This means that we expect you to care about your safety too. If you see something that's unsafe, don't do it. It's just that simple. This is why we have the Stop Work Authority as part of our Live Safe, Work Safe program. Every employee has the right and responsibility to stop work if it's unsafe. Alan McKinney, CEO and President, gives you that authority without fear of discipline to immediately stop any work activity that presents a hazard to you or your coworkers. In return, we ask that you participate in the safety task analysis, actively demonstrate you care and have concern for others through the intervention of at-risk activities, and provide feedback about on-the-job safety performance challenges. Our approach is really simple. Safety of all of our loved ones matter because they matter. We believe Eldeco does not exist without its employees, and therefore each and every person within our organization is an essential team member. Hey, People are what make us a great team, and we need you to understand that obligation in full as it relates to quality of life at work and at home. We expect each and every one of you to take responsibility for your safety and the safety of others around you. So please, use your stop work card anytime you think you need to. Take that moment to help yourselves, your coworkers, and your family. We also want to make sure you report any and all accidents as soon as you're aware of them. We don't punish you for this information, we celebrate it. Just be sure to tell your supervisor as soon as possible, even if the accident didn't cause an injury. Now, every work site is required to have an emergency action plan for a variety of different potential situations, including severe weather, fires, bomb threats, emergency medical, appropriate facilities close by to treat non-life-threatening injury, and hospitals identified with maps to their locations. See your supervisor or manager for any of those emergency action plans. Now, just so you know, we understand accidents happen. We are all just humans, and humans make mistakes. Remember, we are not about blaming you for an accident. We want to make sure no one else gets hurt. A key way to help all Eldeco employees stay healthy is to be sure you report all accidents and injuries as soon as they happen, no matter how small. We want to know, yes, a cut finger or a twinge in your back after you lift something. We know that waiting on treatment can make things worse. This doesn't mean we're going to send you to a doctor for everything, but we can provide first aid and rest to help you. But not letting us know when you get hurt is not okay. Not reporting is a big deal and could result in discipline, so be sure to talk to your supervisor if you're ever injured. Now, before you start work, we require that you complete a job safety task analysis. You remember this, we talked about it before. And this includes our subcontractors as well. We have a simple form to use that promotes safety involvement and ownership by everyone. Now, doing an STA also allows hazard identification, on-the-spots and refresher training, worker commitment, and improved quality and production by looking for hazards and fixing them the right way. And of course, it prevents injuries. The form is designed to be completed at the task and crew level, meaning the people actually doing the work and evaluating the safety of the task. Well, you. The STA identifies the logical steps of the task, the hazards of those steps, how to control or eliminate those hazards, including identifying any resources you're going to need to work safely. Now, you're going to get more training on this, but let's take a look at the form. First, we have the project info, then the task steps. Now, don't miss anything here, because then we move on to what can hurt you. Try and be specific, kind of paint a picture of the hazards for those completing the task. The next page of the form helps you remember all the different hazards. Yeah, there's a few. Review the sections and check the boxes for any required permits, PPE, and any safety plans you're going to need to implement. Now, back to a sample completed first page, we wrote down how we plan to prevent the injury and noted things like specific PPE, housekeeping, safe work practices, a risk review, or how to eliminate the hazard that you got from the second page. Then the whole team signs off on the form and commits to the plan. Your supervisor reviews it and approves it or adds to it. And if anything is changed by the supervisor, the crew reviews the new plan and recommits. Since you're new here, learn from others who have been on the job longer to make sure you complete this properly in the future. We've talked a lot about who Eldeco is and how much we care about you. We want every day to be safe for you, but some of this work has risks, and we want to be sure you know the basic information about our biggest risks. Our critical risks, things like falls, electrical hazards, chemical exposures, and so much more. You'll get a lot more training in the field or wherever your new job will take you. Right now, we want to be sure, though, that you understand we are just discussing the major topics at a pretty high level. What we're going to cover is just the basics of our policies, systems, and procedures. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or you're unsure how to do your work safely, we want you to stop and ask for help, clarity, or the right equipment to do it safely. Each site is different, so make sure to ask your supervisor anytime you start on a new project about any unique risks, and of course, for information on the emergency action plan. Let's talk about our first critical risk, work at elevations, and how to protect yourself. To avoid falls, we implement engineering and design controls to keep you protected. But if we can't, before any exposure to a fall, you will need to complete your safety task planning and, of course, secure your work area. We provide great equipment for you. that is comfortable and that will protect you if you need a personal fall arrest system or PFAS. Now, only use the PFAS when it's safe to use, has safe, acceptable anchor points, and you're connected with a dual retractable or DSRL, dual self-retracting lanyard. Now, we do insist that you use a double lanyard connection to ensure you're not at risk for a fall for even a moment. Now, because falls can be so dangerous, we don't want you to ever work alone at heights. Always be sure to have your emergency response plan prepared in case of a fall. Like any other type of fall potential, you need to wear a personal fall restraint, a rest system attached to a suitable anchor point when working in mobile elevated work platforms or suspended work baskets. Be sure to complete your risk assessment even when working on ladders. Some other fall hazards to protect against are floor and roof openings, which need covers or barricades. And lastly, don't forget about objects that can fall or be dropped from heights. Protect others nearby with barricades or signs, or use tool lanyards or tethers. Now, let's talk a little bit about safety during lifting operations. Before any lifting operations, the competent person will assess the lift and determine the lift method and required equipment. If you will be operating any powered lifting devices, you must be trained and certified before you can operate them. Only trained and competent persons are allowed to rig loads. They will inspect and clear the equipment for use before a lift occurs. If you're ever asked to help rig a load without this critical training, please let your supervisor know. We lift some really heavy stuff out there and never want to chance anyone getting hurt. So our next critical risk is stored energy, or energy that remains in a piece of equipment even after it's turned off. Okay, so you need to remember that work regarding energy isolation doesn't always require a permit unless specified by the client or the owner. But before that permit is signed, you need to make sure all electrical, mechanical, pressure, motion, gravity, and chemical energy sources have been identified. The next step is to discharge, then de-energize and isolate all the energy. Be sure to use the system of locks and tags, which you'll learn more about from your supervisor. The next step is to test the system to ensure it's effective and that no one is exposed to energy. Be sure to monitor and evaluate the system periodically. It is important to coordinate and confirm the energy isolation with any other work group affected, and only remove locks that you have placed. This is pretty serious stuff, so be sure you're trained, competent, and authorized before you do any work that requires lockout tagout. Not sure what all this means yet? That's okay. Talk to your supervisor and get more training. Now let's move on to learning about confined spaces safety. We don't do a lot of work in this area, but there are some safety practices you need to know about. You must be authorized by a permit and trained to work in a confined space. This is super important, so be sure you remember it. Now, before you start work in a confined space, you got to make sure all the potential sources of hazardous energy in and around the space have been identified and isolated, following that lockout tagout that we just talked about. Now, a competent person will test the air with a calibrated piece of equipment before anyone can enter the space. The space will be ventilated in every possible place. Your supervisor will establish continuous monitoring of the space. In order to begin work, the confined space supervisor and the attendant must be there at the space, and all access controls must be in place. The attendants and confined space workers will establish controls for communications so that everyone is on the same page. You cannot enter a confined space without the right rescue equipment and a rescue plan in place, ever. Our critical risk of arc flash is up next. Here at Eldeco, you must hold an authorized permit to work on any live electrical equipment. Please do not work on any energized or potentially energized equipment unless you've been trained and authorized. Always make sure to identify and isolate any potential sources of electrical energy prior to the work. It is important to only use the right equipment that is well maintained when working with energized sources. The protective equipment you use, including arc flash PPE, should match the protection you need to do the work safely. Also, don't forget to place barricades and warning devices to prevent others from contacting electrical energy. And remember, don't work alone when working on energized or potentially energized equipment. Excavations is next on the critical risk list. Here at Eldeco, any excavation or groundbreaking work must be authorized by a permit. Part of the permitting process means you must identify and locate all the overhead and underground services and hazards like pipelines, electric, and telecom cables. Surround the excavation site with barriers to restrict access and make sure you use extra barriers or other controls to keep equipment away from the excavation to prevent a collapse or from the equipment actually entering the excavation by accident. Now, you may enter an excavation or trench only after you've cleared it as a confined space, following the confined space work practices. Of course, that assumes it's actually a confined space. You have prevented collapse from shoring, sloping, or benching. You have confirmed the ground is stable and rechecked after adverse weather or anything else that could make the hole unstable. And then make sure that there's a safe way to enter and exit the hole safely. An emergency response plan for the excavation should include escape methods and first responder needs. Our last critical risk in this presentation is hazardous materials. Not everyone will work with a lot of hazardous materials, but if you do, we want you to follow all of our safe work practices. Each site determines which materials will be on site and how to work with those chemicals safely. There will be a registry on each site with all of the names of the materials. Your supervisor will show you how to access any safety data sheets when you need to know more about the chemical. Each chemical will be labeled so you know what's in the container. Be sure you also know where it must be stored. You must be trained on all of our safe work practices on the chemicals before you work with them. Be sure to ask your supervisor for any information you need to work safely. Although we are licensed in 24 states, our team can help from wherever we are. If at any time, for any reason, please reach out to our team. We're here to help, assist, and support you. As we close, take a moment and let this sink in. Safety matters because people matter. You matter, not just at work, but at home as well. Safety is not a light switch you can turn on and off. As you join our family, make sure your switch is always on. People are counting on you. Remember, live safe, work safe is the only acceptable approach for Eldeco.